Good evening. Welcome to tonight's Alelia Bundles Community Scholars Lecture, Vision to Value, Moving Justice-Impacted Workforce from Individual Talent to Business Partnership with Bundles Scholar Ray Tebout. I'm George Calderaro, Senior Associate Director of Auditing and Community Programs at Columbia School of Professional Studies. The Bundles Community Scholars Lecture and Program are presented and administered by the School of Professional Studies and the Office of Government and Community Affairs at Columbia. The Scholars Program was created in 2012 to enable independent scholars in the community to pursue their academic aspirations through access to Columbia courses and resources. This lecture series was created to provide a forum for scholars to share their work and research with the community and greater public. Please note that the application deadline to be a 2026-27 Bundle Scholar is April 17th. Check the website and or talk to me or my colleague Deb Sack, who checked you in, if you have any questions or would like to discuss the program tonight. In tonight's lecture, Ray explores vision to value, his learning approach that builds entrepreneurial thinking while system-impacted people are working. Through entrepreneurship, project management, and strategic coaching, participants learn how to navigate organizations, communicate effectively with decision makers, plan and deliver work, and turn ideas into projects that leaders notice and support. At this point, I should note that the Columbia School of Professional Studies is the proud academic partner of the Center for Justice at Columbia in offering our prison education program for incarcerated students and the Justice in Education program for recently released students. More recently, the School of Professional Studies has created and offered the Career Catalyst Internship program, which employs and offers career development at SPS for justice-involved young people. This innovative program was created in 2024 and is led by SPS Senior Associate Dean Zelon Crawford. Following the lecture, Ray will take questions from the audience using the microphone that I will bring to you. A recording of this discussion will be available to view and share on this event's page on the SBS website on April 10th. And now, Ray Tebout has dedicated his career to unlocking the leadership potential of justice-impacted talent, developing his approach through work in both correctional and community-based settings. He holds a BA in psychology and economics from City University of New York. He's completing a master's in human resources and holds trainer-level credentials in human resources, project management, and addiction treatment. He leads Mindframe Talent Development Solutions, where he helps organizations build talent pipelines and strengthen workforce performance. He serves on the boards of the Fortune Society and the Petey Green Program. And now, please help me welcome Ray Tebout.
Thank you for that introduction, George. Good evening, everybody. Just want to take a second to thank you all for coming out. I know how rough it is to get somewhere after work, and I really appreciate you coming out to see me and hear me. I also want to thank Columbia University for offering me the opportunity to participate in the Bundle Scholarship Program. It's been hugely helpful in my work. This all started out as an idea that I was trying to figure out along the way. Sorry, let me just get this. Yep, that I was trying to figure out along the way, and Columbia and the classes I was able to take here really assisted with that. So I won't hold you very long. So George told you a little bit about my background, so this is where I am today. I'm a consultant. I work for Exodus Transitional Community. I'm an executive there. I'm a Bundle Scholar, a whole bunch of other stuff, right? That's today. And throughout my journey, I've been able to build pretty much my career and shape it the way I wanted. I've created my own jobs, including the job descriptions. I created my own degree. There's no one else in the world that has the degree I have because I had a specialized interest and no one was offering what I wanted, so I made it. I'm on boards where I get asked advice from people who I think are smarter than I am, but they ask me for advice and support anyway. And that's where I'm at today, right? But I want to take a step back 23 years ago when I was released from prison, and after serving 11 years. And I didn't know much of anything. I had a lot of energy, a lot more energy than I do today. But I had a lot of energy, I had a lot of ambition, I had great ideas, but I didn't really know how anything worked or how to do anything. It's a very scary experience because very quickly you get left behind in that environment. That setting does not support career growth or, quite frankly, interpersonal growth, right? What I did know for a fact was I was passionate about helping people and improving systems. I knew I was never going back to prison again. And I knew I wanted to start a business, but I also needed a job because I needed to eat and pay bills, and I wanted to live independently. And by the way, I was on parole supervision. And they want you to have a job. They don't want to hear about the business idea that you want to create. So there was a conflict for me. So I had entrepreneurial training and an entrepreneurial spirit, so I decided, okay, I'll build my business inside other people's organizations. I will treat my job like a business. So that's what motivated this spark of an idea. How do we get people to treat their jobs like their businesses? And when you talk to CEOs, you know, they'll tell you they want people who are autonomous and who can make independent decisions and who have good judgment and take their job as seriously as the CEO does. And that formed the idea of teaching people how to run their jobs like it was their own company. And I mean, if you're a barista at Starbucks, you can still innovate. You can look for ways to be more efficient. You can look for ways to get your ideas in front of executives. And that scales all the way up or down. For maintenance people, whatever your role is, you can own that role. And by owning that role, it offers you an opportunity and a pathway for autonomy and career growth. The challenge, at least from my experience, was having all this ambition, these ideas, and all of this stuff, and not having the tools and skills to be able to communicate my ideas effectively. Having to still mature professionally and learn how to regulate my emotions when I didn't get my way. So and those things were barriers to my ascension and to my career growth. And so I overcame those and continue to overcome those. But what I don't like is if I've already been through something, why does anyone else need to go through the exact same challenges I've experienced? It seems like a waste of time and energy to me. So I set on this path to figure out how to reproduce the experience I had without all the roadblocks. Originally, this idea was about catching people, particularly in social services in the reentry sector or the criminal legal services center, and helping them overcome that career bump, that point where you're at middle management and you just kind of can't get over that hump. And then an interesting thing happened. My brother was incarcerated. And he was incarcerated for a very long time. And that's his story, and I'm going to let him tell that story. He's going to share that story with us this evening, right? But I found myself supporting someone who was incarcerated. I've supported a lot of people who were incarcerated, but this was different. This was somebody that I had a responsibility to. The other folks were folks I chose to do it from a kind place. This was someone who was my blood. And I felt the need to support him. But what I wasn't going to do was pay him to be in prison. That's not a job, folks. So we went on this learning journey. And through this learning journey, I watched his evolution. As I thought of something to help him, I applied it. I applied the principles I learned through the research I've been doing here. And I started to see his evolution. And what I want to go to now is this quote from Glenn E. Martin. For those of you that don't know, Glenn is one of the trailblazers in this field. There are many, including my former supervisor, Julio Medina, who made it fashionable for men of color to lead in the reentry space. But I want to go back to Glenn. People closest to the problem are often closest to the solution, but farthest from power and resources. That reflects my lived experience. I had a lot of answers. I'd been through a lot of these challenges that the folks that were coming home and coming to our organizations had been through. But I didn't have the resources, and I didn't have the power, and I didn't know how to get them. So I thought that was just me, and then I watched dozens, hundreds, at this point maybe thousands of men and women come home from prison and experience many of the same challenges. And what I realized was we have assets. We have people who have lived experience. And now it's fashionable to say words like lived experience, expert, credible messenger. And one of the challenges that I've experienced is that gets one-dimensionalized, right? That lived experience expertise is solely around incarceration or trauma or any of the other things that bring people as peers, as credible messengers to social service sectors. And I wanted to expand that definition. We are all a collection of our lived experiences, and those lived experiences aren't just the worst things we've been through or the poor choices we've made. They're all the choices that we could and have made since before and after those experiences, right? Most people I know don't wake up, they're not born and they go to prison and that's their lived experience. That's not real, right? There was a whole bunch of stuff that happened before, during, and after. And what I wanted to do was create a pathway for people who were incarcerated. So a bit of a shift here, right? Shifting away from just people who are in that mid-management point and trying to overcome the hump to why aren't we building pipelines from incarceration to skilled leadership in the community? Most folks are going to be released from prison at some point. And that time of that time period of incarceration can become dead space. One of the things I like to say is no one comes home to fix lawnmowers these days, but they have small engine repair programs. We are using AI. They just got a minimized version of Microsoft Office on tablets. Folks are getting left behind. And we're a resilient group, so we're gonna catch up. Those of us that are motivated and directed and inspired, we're gonna catch up. But it's a huge gap. And what I found is it typically takes about as long as the person's been incarcerated to be free in order for them to catch up. So I would say that I kind of hit my professional stride as a community member, give or take a decade after my release, because of all that time I lost in between, right? So what I found is people come into organizations with all this ambition and they hit a couple of barriers. They don't possess business acumen. They don't understand how the work world works. They don't understand how organizations work. They don't understand how systems work. They don't have the language to convey their ideas. This is not a deficit statement. This is a statement of fact. They're not taught. I want to take a second and just ask everyone to reflect for a second. Think about early in your career. Now, I know most of us here are seasoned professionals now. We've been through so many things and learned so much. But think about when you were green as a twig. And you were just trying to figure out how things worked. And think about some of the things that you've learned since that you wish someone had just pulled you up on or put you through a course for. Maybe they did, and that's how you develop what you have now, right? I'm curious from the group, what are some of those things that you know now that you just wish someone, that you learned the hard way, that you wish someone had just said to you, hey, you know, if you say this or if you do this or you know that, you'll move along faster. So I'm going to actually open it up for that, Joy. If I could just get a couple of people that are comfortable sharing What's something that you wish someone had shared with you early on in your career that would have helped you navigate faster, better?
I think this is on.
Hi. I did not realize at the beginning just how much relationships truly mattered. I was just like focused on the job and the tasks and not so much on building relationships. That took a very long time to kind of realize that's very important.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Lil, one of our bundle scholars.
Having grown up in a Teamster household, one of the first things that I realized once I got into corporate America was that I was my own collective bargaining unit.
Could you say a little more about that, please?
In the sense that I had to make sure that I kept track of what successes that I had and made sure that the right people were aware that that was me. That when I went to company affairs, that I no longer networked with just the people who worked in the area that I was. I went out to these events and were meeting people who worked in other areas who could assist me in growing my career. I also got involved with community service and volunteer work as well too, because that was a way to distinguish myself from the crowd of other people.
Thank you so much. So I heard relationship building and relationship management, networking, advocacy, keeping track of your own metrics and your own successes and being able to present that to people who are invaluable and important in your career. And I wanna go back to this relationship piece, right? So incarceration is a hostile environment. Now, not everyone has a hostile experience. Some people figure out how to navigate very quickly. Most folks, I'll take it a step back. For most folks, becoming incarcerated is a pathway. They learn a certain set of skills and practices that gets them to prison, right? And those skills tend to serve you well and get refined when in prison. And those skills are highly valuable. Some of them are not healthy skills, but they keep you alive and they keep you thriving. Those skills and techniques don't translate well in the community. They don't translate well at work. How you build a relationship in a hostile environment. We're using prison here. It could be any hostile environment. It doesn't have to be prison, right? These ideas transfer across different environments, right? That's not necessarily what builds you strong relationships in the community. The way you communicate frustration in a hostile environment does not necessarily translate well in the community, right? Or in a non-hostile community, or a supposedly non-hostile community. We all know there's some covert stuff sometimes that goes on too, right? But these are some of the barriers that folks are facing, and thank you both for sharing your experience, because these are some of the things that I wanted to teach through Vision to Value. And the opportunity here is, we have people who have learned to survive through some of the harshest, most hostile environments in the world. And I gotta tell you, you have to be creative in order to do that. If you're not creative, if you're not resilient, if you're not a problem solver, you will not do well in those environments, right? And one of the biggest challenges I found was trying to get my ideas across to people who could make them happen, who had access to the power and resources, because I was not strategically aligned with the organization. I had this great idea that I'm gonna make something up. So you're a car manufacturer, but I want to put a babysitting department in your business. There's no alignment there. It's completely off mission. Unless I can convince people that it's on mission, but I didn't have the skills for that. So what I'm trying to do is connect people who have strong ideas, passion, resilience, all these different things, with the skills to present themselves in a way that aligns with the organization's strategy and moves not only their own mission forward, but the organization forward. And to kind of encapsulate all of this, I want people to learn how to own their jobs like it's their own business. So one of the tools I use to do this is project management. And I kind of fell into project management. I realized I was doing project management for years. I kind of read about it once, and I was like, oh, wow, that's the same thing I'm doing. And they offer a certification for this. Great. So I was training, I was planning for it for a long time. Life started lifing, and things started happening. And then one of the things I did with my brother was, I was telling him about it. He seemed excited, so I said, I'll tell you what. If you're my study buddy, and you partner with me on this, I'll train you as I'm training myself. We'll do this together and I'll pay you for it. He got really excited about the payment part. So we did this for about 6 months, every Saturday. My partner Ruth is sitting over here in the corner. She can attest to this. We were in a teeny tiny little temporary apartment together, and so she had to listen to me yell, scream, and talk for 2 hours every Saturday morning while we're going through this practice and this study. So I bought him the book. He'd read it. I put together some lessons. We'd go over it. Well, in 6 months, he was explaining stuff to me that I was confused about. Great, okay. And more importantly, he was applying what he learned. So he would tell me how he was able to non-violently resolve a conflict using the conflict resolution skills he learned in the project management professional book. Okay, great. He would tell me how he was able to get something from the administration in the place he was in. They were not a kind administration, but he was able to maneuver that space and get things that he needed and wanted, and actually have the officers and the staff respect him using the same set of skills. He learned how to build different relationships. He learned how to get people to recognize his work, all through this body of knowledge that he was acquiring. So I said, all right, I'll tell you what. So fast forward, I take the test, I get the credential, I register, I apply to be an instructor and be able to offer the official training from the Project Management Institute, the body that credentials PMPs. And I said, I'll make you a deal, man. If you take this test that is the same length as the real test, no one else is going to have to take the test, but don't tell him that. He's my brother, so I wanted him to work a little bit harder. But he takes the test, and he got an 80%. I'm not convinced I got an 80%. He excelled at this, and then he starts teaching it. And then he starts influence, and his classes are, hey, what are you reading, buddy? He tells them, hey, can you teach that to me? So now he's got 5 or 6 guys in the yard that he's teaching this to. And he's telling me about their outcomes and their results, how they're getting better jobs, how they're resolving things, how they're staying out of trouble, how they're building relationships. And then something really interesting happened. He tells me he's standing out in the yard, minding his business, teaching his class, and one of the senior administrators comes over and asks him, what are you doing? He says, well, I'm teaching these guys, we're going over some project management stuff. So then the administrator asks all these guys, they think they're conspiring to start a riot or something, right? So what are you guys learning? And they're able to recite the stuff and talk about how they're applying it. I have never heard of this in 30 plus years of involvement with the criminal legal system. They offered him a class. Do you want to come down in this classroom and teach this? That blew my mind. So that's telling me it's working, right? And what I took away from that, because I really wanted to kind of extract what was working about that. So some of it is executive scaffolding, right? So giving people the foundation to ask the right questions, to look at problems as opportunities and not just complain, oh my God, the complaints I used to get from this guy He could complain for hours. And now he comes to me and says, hey, I have a problem and I figured out a solution. And it's a solution that doesn't just serve me, it serves everyone, right? So he's making systems changes, right? Strategic oversight, teaching people stakeholder engagement, you know, to the earlier points of relationship building, right? These folks are all stakeholders, everyone. He's starting to see, instead of seeing people as enemies, he's seeing them as potential stakeholders, right? All right, this person I don't get along with, they have a beef. Maybe if I could solve their problem with and for them, then I could build a new relationship. So he's turned people who he originally had adverse relationships with into friends, colleagues, and allies, right? Including administrators. And he's done it on the up and up. He's done it from a legitimate perspective. The other thing is, the certificate of completion I gave him qualifies him to sit for the project management professional exam. He could come home and be a PMP. Now, little financial fact, most folks coming home from prison make, at minimum wage or a little bit over. Let's call it $30,000 or $40,000 a year. People with PMP holders, they earn between $90,000 and $120,000 a year entry level. So he now has a real legitimate professional level skill that he can come home, and it's in the information sector. It's in knowledge work. It's not manual labor. Nothing wrong with manual labor. Love manual labor. For someone who's lost decades of their career trajectory, you want to start them as far ahead in the race as possible, and this is an opportunity to do that. It also creates a shared language. When he talks to the administration, he speaks to the administration about things they understand and care about. The operations of the facility. He asks all the right questions. He gets good results. So, the overall program has 3 components to it. The first one is project management is the foundation. And the idea here is offer the 35-hour curriculum to incarcerated people. No one, as far as I've been able to find, and I've done some pretty extensive research on this, is doing that. And it just seems like such an easy lift. Also, running yourself, like seeing yourself and running yourself like a business, so you become a business partner with your organization. Whatever job you land in, you're a business partner. And one of the classes I'm taking on human capital management, you know, they talked about this. When you see people as partners, they contribute, and you share the benefits of it. So it's not my job, I'm going to stay over here in my little corner. I'm going to help out because I'm going to get a share of whatever this organization earns, or I'm going to get some benefits of some sort. I'll get some autonomy. I don't know about you folks, I don't like to be micromanaged. I like building trust where my boss literally doesn't need to know what I do all day. What she needs to know is at the end of the week, I accomplished these things. I'm stuck in this place. I need her leverage in this one area, and here's my next steps. Those are my updates to my boss. I've not always had that experience. And you know, one of the things that I've found leads to incarceration is a desire for freedom. But with freedom comes responsibility, and you need to earn trust. This is an approach to earning trust. And then there's the motivational behavior coaching. Its foundation is in my work in addiction counseling. And what this is, you know, trauma, incarceration is often born of trauma and adverse experiences, and the residual effects of that are stuck in people's thinking, attitudes, and behavior. And that's not always addressed, particularly in communities of color. Therapy is seen as a negative thing. It's stigmatized, right? So people don't get the mental health support they need. For whatever reason, shame, guilt. I know for me it was working with therapists and going, I'm not letting you anywhere near my mind, right? Fear. This is a gentler approach at getting people to look at the things that constantly sabotage their success. You ever met that person who's absolutely brilliant and just at the height of when they're about to get somewhere, they burn themselves to the ground? Yeah, I've known several of them. Some of them made pretty major public news stories. And I've been able to look at where they went wrong. It was all that stuff that they had never addressed. So they did all the things to succeed, all the actions, but they never dug out that kernel of arrogance or that fight or flight response to danger or perceived danger. There's a whole bunch of stuff that people don't get to decompress. And as one person who I knew who had severe mental illness, he was not system impacted. And I think that was mostly luck. But one of the things he said when I said, well, you know, why don't you just tell people that you're going through all, he says, you can't tell your business partners that you're mentally unstable because they'll stop doing business with you. And so I get that tension. Who do you trust with these deep, dark secrets, right? Well, this is an opportunity for people to dig that stuff up in a safe space with someone who's trained and not just understands mental health, but also understands the challenges of incarceration and trauma and adverse situations or upbringings. So I think of project management as cognitive technology, right? It's not hard technology, it's soft technology, but it's something that enables people to learn the structures and strategies and reproducible approaches to solve problems. And let's just face it, the bigger the problem you can solve, the more valuable you are in the world. And in the workforce, in your family, I know y'all all got family members that either depend on you or you depend on them for something that they're able to figure out that you can't, right? Whatever the setting is, problem solving is the name of the game. And this is an approach to solving problems. Innovation. A lot of my success at work has been looking at a problem and going, I think I can do that better. And then doing it. Getting the buy-in from my leadership. Hey, I want to try this crazy idea, and here's what it's going to cost, which is usually not a lot. I'm pretty efficient. And they say, yeah, I don't care. You're going to give me what I need at the end of the week? Yeah, sure. All right. And that's led to promotions. And again, that autonomy where literally I've run most of my roles like they were my own business, and my boss became my stakeholder and kind of now acts as my board member, my advisory committee, right? And the behavioral coaching and motivation, you know, yeah, I went to therapy eventually, but the work I've done in teaching addiction counseling has been hugely helpful in thinking through challenges that could have come up, but I was able to stop them from interfering with my goals. So, talked about that. I'm going to skip that part, and I'm going to go straight to the story of someone who went through vision to value, my brother. So, introducing Ali Tebout, I will let him tell his story.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ali Tebout. I want to begin by thanking Columbia University and everyone attending this lecture for taking the time to listen to my story. I'm grateful for the opportunity to share my experience and what learning through the Vision to Value program has meant for me. I'm 46 years old, and I'm currently serving a 40-year sentence in prison. I came to prison at age 34, unable to read or write. For the first time in my life, I was truly scared and powerless. My brother once told me that most people spend the first 5 years in prison figuring out how they want to spend their time. What changed things for me was when he told me that he would not support someone in prison who wasn't willing to work on their personal growth or educate themselves. I'm not going to tell you that this didn't hurt. It meant trusting someone with a secret I had carried for a long time. In my past, people who knew I couldn't read or write often took advantage of my lack of education. What my brother did next changed my life. He sent me 50 comic books and told me he would pay me $50 to read them. Later, he told me there were other opportunities for me to earn money through education, growth, and personal development. At first, I was doing it for the money, but over time, I realized something important. Real support isn't just giving someone money. Real support is helping someone build themselves. That felt better than receiving money. My brother began sending books and asking me to read them and write reports on each one. He even sent me a template for how to structure the reports. The first book he sent me was The Real Cost of Prison, a comic book explaining how prison came to be the institution it is today. He explained that I needed to understand my environment in order to stay safe and focused. After that, he sent books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and The Rich Get Richer and The Poor Get Prison. The list goes on. Those books helped change my mindset. Since then, I've continued studying and growing. I completed and passed a 35-hour project management course. I'm also studying the talent development body of knowledge and working toward my GED. For someone who once couldn't read or write, these accomplishments represent a completely different way of thinking about life. If it wasn't for my brother showing me that I didn't need to depend on anyone else to accomplish my goals, and that I am my own program, I would probably still have the same mindset I had when I first came to prison. Programs like Vision to Value matter because they teach people how to think differently. They show people how to plan, how to communicate, and how to approach problems in a structured way. For people who are incarcerated, or for people returning home after incarceration, those skills can make a real difference. They help people build discipline, leadership, and the ability to create value wherever they are. For me, learning these skills changed how I see myself and how I approach the future. Thank you again for listening to my story.
Thank you. I will pass that applause on to him. So if you didn't guess, that was AI, but it was his voice. It was his words. But I wanted him to be with us here tonight because this is his experience. And I appreciate he gave me full permission to use this, and I thought that was really vulnerable of him. Quick update: he is about one test away from being able to sit for his GED. And I'm incredibly proud of him because he's been working his behind off for that. And he told me that he passed the last test he needed before he's able to sit for the GED exam. So can we give him another round for that, please? And as proof of concept, he is now one of my business partners. I go to him for advice. And it's good advice, too. I mean, I pay him for that, too, now. He has grown so much through this, and again, has been able to impact those around him, which to me is even more meaningful. And he's motivated, and he's got good ideas, and he's able to sell his ideas. He's earning a living wage, which is helping him helping him towards legal fees for an attorney. So I'm holding his money that he earned legitimately, right? Because I asked, because I don't want any crooked money in my account. And no, he assured me and proved to me that this is legitimate money for coaching that he's doing inside, right? So he's been able to build a life that's better than some people in the street in prison using and applying these skills. And he's been able to add tremendous value to his environment and to himself. And he's only continuing to grow. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the benefits of this program for impacted individuals, right? So this isn't just a set of skills, this is an identity transformation, right? And it's what I was talking about earlier with the lived experience credible messenger model, right? It's not just I've been in prison, it's professionalizing that experience, turning all of the experiences of someone's life into a professional package that they can market and use to help other people. It replaces the self-sabotaging patterns with cognitive frameworks that for strategic planning, so people can be strategic. You know, one of the things any of us who have experienced any significant stress or trauma probably know, it's a little hard to think long-term when you have near-term needs and urgencies, right? So, you know, one of the most frustrating questions is, what's your 5-year plan when you're a person struggling to survive? What 5-year plan? I'm trying to get to next week, possibly the end of the day, and you want me to think 5 years ahead. It's very challenging to do that. This opens up opportunities for people to start thinking long-term, envisioning a future different from what they've lived through. Economic mobility. I talked about the earning potential of someone with a PMP, but forget the credential, just the skills alone. increases their ability to add value and earn. And lived experience is an asset, not in a tokenizing way, not, oh, let's parade the people who have been in prison around on a stage. No. I've been in most of what I learned about how to navigate systems early on was from studying the prison system. I got tired of getting in trouble. That's literally what it was. So I looked around and I said, how does this thing work? I need to understand how this works. And I deconstructed that system. And then, interestingly enough, I won't name the company, but I worked for a company where I looked at the office politics and I was like, wait a minute, I recognize this dynamic. Oh crap, this is Attica Yard. Okay, I know how to do this. This is easy. I got this one. And I mentioned those underlying political dynamics earlier, right? So a lot of times, a lot of us don't realize where we're really at. We think and this was a pretty established, high-end organization with a reputation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But underneath that, you know what was happening? People were being people. They were being petty, they were being catty, they were hiding the ball. All of those things were happening. And this is not unique to this organization. That's just the organization where I woke up and realized that the dynamics were not that much different, right? But learning how to recognize those dynamics and work within them, because they're everywhere. I've done a lot of consulting, and I've not met a company where this doesn't exist. I've not met a school system where this doesn't exist. Shoot, I've not met many family dynamics where this stuff does not exist. It's a very transferable set of skills to be able to understand where you're at and take stock of it and apply the lessons of survival, right? And refine them to something that moves beyond survival to thriving and succeeding. For organizations, you have innovation-ready talent. You have people who look at problems and say, that's not my problem. That's one approach. But who say, oh, I think I can fix that. And I don't even need that much. Shoot, I figured out bigger challenges with fewer resources. When they have an idea, they're able to pitch that idea in a way that makes sense to the folks who can say yes and makes people want to say yes. People want to stay around when they feel valued and when they are valued and when they are able to operate in a way that respects that they are smart and capable. Yeah, and one of the biggest things, so my brother's big push, he's like, I'm focused on two things right now, risk management and communication. He's like, those are the two elements that I think apply the most in my environment. Who else thinks those elements are important? Yeah, we do it all day. And I don't know about you, I know I can always get better at both of those. So, ideally, what I want to do is maximize human capital. And I know that sounds really corporate. I get that. But it's the best way to describe it. There is no company without a person. And the stronger your people are, the stronger your company is. So I want companies and organizations to invest in this process and in this project. So why it works. I talked about this, but building on people's strengths. So starting from your lived experiences of strength, whatever that is, and you're going to refine it. You're going to weed out the kinks and the challenges along the way, and the barriers and the internal stuff that gets in the way, right? Until it's not just a strength, but it's your greatest asset. So integrated decision making and an integrated process. So taking the mental health, the skills, and the behaviors, and training people how to do that in a systematic way. Immediate application, he's using it in prison, folks. And one of the things he's come to the conclusion of, it doesn't matter how deep they bury him in the prison or what's going on, he has this toolkit that works everywhere he's at. And that's what he shared with me. And also the ownership model. I think it's really important for folks to own something, and the first thing you can own is yourself. So here's the theory of change. So essentially, we put in some training, we build in this scaffolding and this mindset, These folks are now career ready on more than one level. They're career ready from a documented training and experience level. They also have practice using the tools. And what we're hoping for is a stronger professional identity. I mean, imagine people being able to build a real like my brother has a legitimate professional identity in prison. He can write a credible resume right now. And it doesn't matter, hopefully he will not do all of that time. He's working really hard not to do all of that time. But he's determined that whether he gets free or he's in there, he's gonna continue to build his resume. And when he is released, he can present himself as an asset with supporting information and documentation. And yeah, the higher earnings, there's plenty of studies that'll tell you that people with jobs, stable housing, community ties, and other resources are very unlikely to go back to prison. And starting that from inside, coming home with it, and then knowing how to be a business partner early on creates unlimited potential for growth. So I did some research, and there's a fair amount of research that supports what I'm saying. Nothing specifically on the program I'm creating, because it doesn't exist right now. No one's offering project management in prisons in a meaningful way. No one's talking about entrepreneurship, which is internal business creation, which everyone gets confused with entrepreneurship because they sound exactly the same. And it's the same or a very similar set of skills that's applied to your job or your company, innovation and ownership. A lot of what we're doing here is cognitive behavioral therapy, but it's not called that, so it's not scary, it's not therapy language. It's really what works. What's going on in your life? What are you doing that works and what doesn't? And the lived experience and peer support, we know that people tend to learn better from those who they more closely relate to. So if we have a whole bunch of people who are system impacted, who are taking this approach and sharing it, and folks see that it works, they're much more likely to catch on. So what's next? I want to scale the reach. I've done this with one person from beginning to, well, it's actually on a continuum, so it's continuing, but that's one example. I'd like to scale this up and try it with more people, so I'm looking to expand the offering. But I will say this, it's expensive, folks. I mean, me paying for it and buying the books and spending my time, all of those things are costly. So doing it with one person as a pilot is, you know, it was doable, but I couldn't do that with 20 people, which is nowhere near the reach that we'd need to see significant impact. I want to systematize it, so I've got a collection of different things that I've done. I want to bring it all together in one body of knowledge. I'd like to do some research and evaluation. That's not me, with a family member, because I'm sure you can see all the potential for perceived bias in that, right? And that's why he took the test, by the way. So no one's going to say I gave him anything. I have the documentation to show he took this thing. This is his. He earned it. Yeah, and eventually I'd like to create a lived experience credential that they do exist currently. I want one that represents the entirety of a person's lived experience, both their personal and their professional experience. And a body of professional skills that they can represent proudly. So ultimately, and it says New York City, I want to expand this to transform the US workforce to more credibly and more powerfully represent people who are system impacted, and where folks can take their lived experience and their good ideas and turn it into things that are truly transformative, not just for themselves, but not just for their companies, for systems. Because these folks do have the answers. They have solutions. They don't know how to get it in front of the right people. So at this point, I will pause and ask, thank you. Thank you very much. I will.
If anyone has any questions, I'll bring the mic to you. I'll come over to you.
Good evening. Thank you so much for your insight. That was really incredible. Ironically, last week I went to the Schomburg Center and there was a film, or two films that were screened, and we got to speak to a formerly incarcerated kind of leader who just like advocated for like, you know, just more advocacy around the criminal justice system, reform, et cetera, and I didn't know about the Aurelia Bundles program until receiving the Columbia email, so I just feel like that was very nice alignment. My question is around, I'm Flo, by the way, nice to meet you. My question is around like your statement with project management as, there was something about it being kind of like, information technology. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the exact framing.
Cognitive technology.
Thank you, cognitive technology. And as you were speaking and like going back to it a few times, I kept thinking about it as like cognitive IP as well, just in the sense that like, if you can create systems, you can kind of own that creation, right? And people now will hire you and your brother and, you know, the other people that you'll bless with like innovative thinking because of their IP essentially. So if you can maybe talk a bit more about where like the IP of it all could be important or could be empowering to people, because our ideas, like the ways that we figure out project management and project solving, like are our ideas, right? Like you figured something out and you're gonna go and now sell that or project that, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know if that connection makes as much sense to you as it did to me in my head, but I kept thinking, oh wow, it's not just like cognitive technology, but it's also like kind of like our IP, right? Like it's our ideas. So we can also debrief about it if that was confusing. But yeah.
I think that's an excellent question. I just want to make sure I'm understanding. Are you talking about how to package it as IP, how to market it as IP, or just thinking about it as IP? Can you clarify for me a little bit?
Oh, sorry, yeah. Yeah, IP, like intellectual property. And yeah, that's a good question. I guess like in my head, IP is like incredibly important because it's obviously ours. So I guess there was like a one-to-one connection to me, but you're someone who's way more versed in it, so I just didn't know if there was like a potential bridge that could make sense as someone who like does this or like and like is studying it. I feel like cognitive technology, it's my first time hearing that phrase, but like intellectual property is really important. It's kind of like what we, you know, what we own, like you said, equity as humans. So if there was just any insight around like those connections, if I'm dragging it, let me know.
No, I'll attempt to answer it. I mean, I know from my own work, I've been thinking about how to protect my ideas because this is something different and something new. And part of me just wishes that someone would take it and just do amazing things with it. And it also took a lot of work and energy for me to put it together. So I don't share everything, and I do encourage, I can just give you one example. When I consult with people or when I hire people as consultants, or sorry, when they're hiring me as a consultant, one of the things I do is bring my own NDA. I give them an NDA to protect their intellectual property. And I was told I'm crazy for that, but I feel like that's how you build trust. I'm not gonna steal your stuff, is the short version. And, you know, I'm very thoughtful about what I put out in the air because I don't really want anyone to steal anything. But I'm generous. I'll give away, license, all kinds of stuff. I don't want anyone to take it. So I don't know if that's addressing your question. Yeah, but it is definitely a consideration, and one that sadly too many people don't think about until they're in the middle of having their stuff co-opted. So thank you for the question. Go ahead.
First and foremost, thank you so much for this platform you've created. One of the things that stood out to me was how you were able to name the environment that you saw, as opposed to just seeing it as objectively when you said, oh, this is Attica Yard. And I think by naming it, you're kind of able to address it and separate to say, this is something that already exists, this environment already exists. So thank you for that. The question I have is, when someone works with themselves as an individual and they reach that level of ownership in the work that they do, How can someone overcome the glass ceiling after being in the talent curse space, that they're so good at their job, they're maximizing to the best of their ability, but now they're so good that promotion is like, I want to keep you where you are? And how can they manage the insecurity that is probably surrounding their greatness in the workplace?
So how do you overcome the glass ceiling created by being too good at your job, quote
Yes.
unquote? And say the second part again, please.
And how can they manage the insecurities from other people that come with that?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I've experienced some of this. So I'd answer it by saying, first of all, my experience is you don't get promoted for being good at your job. You don't move up for being good at your job. And it is a trap, right? Because if you're the best, I don't know, pick any role in the whole company, no one wants to see you leave that role. You're really good at it, right? So, and so you may be limiting your own growth if that's your claim to fame. And there are some people who want to grow within their role rather than growing out of their role, and that's valuable as well. But if your goal is to move up the ladder, then you move up the ladder by solving different problems, from my experience. And as far as managing the insecurity of others, I think you find the allies who have the power, who are not insecure by because of who you are and how you present. And I can share a little bit about my own experience. You know, I've had people who are pretty senior to me who, I don't want to say they were insecure. The way they responded to me was less secure than what I expected. That's the way I'll frame it, right? And what I want to say, though, is what I realized was I was a direct threat to their role and not acting like a partner. This is the part that was important for me to realize. People feel threatened when they don't feel that you're their ally and you're coming for their role. If you're partnering with them, if you're helping them solve problems that are important to them, then they tend to be more open. Again, this is my experience, both as an employee and as a human capital consultant. You know, if they feel there's alignment, which is why alignment is so important, and that you're moving towards the goals that are important to them, well, you're kind of pushing them up the ladder as you're moving, versus trying to climb on top of them. So I don't know if that's helpful. Any other questions?
Yeah, I'll be right there.
I'm just going to let George drive now. He's got that mic thing under control.
Thank you for this presentation. It was very, very good.
Thank you.
I'm sorry that we came in a little late, so I'm going to ask some questions. Maybe you've already answered it, but I don't know.
Some of the people were asleep while I was talking anyway. It's fine. Go ahead. It's late.
So you are a Columbia University student?
I'm a bundle scholar, correct.
Okay, yes, you're a bundle scholar. So then, and this is a Columbia University program?
Bundle scholarship?
No,
Bundle
this program here that you presented to us.
So so I'm here on a fellowship, which gives us access to Columbia University resources. And George, you can correct any part of this I'm getting wrong, okay? It gives us access to Columbia University resources, classes, spaces, individuals, networking, library, et cetera, so that we can study something of interest to us that would improve the community at large.
Okay, excellent. And then the third question is, so I understand that you're working with incarcerated men, incarcerated.
It's system impacted, so either those in the carceral system or after they're released.
Along with project management, as in teaching them entrepreneurial skills, intrapreneurial skills, is there anything else that you provide and or teach to them? The reason why I say that is because I think this is great. And I was also thinking we should bring back workshops. You know, how to like fix the car, how to sheetrock, paint, those type of skills for when they step out. Because, you know, I know the media and television tends to sensationalize things, but when you see every time things about incarcerated men, it's like The Wire, or you know what I mean? And so I don't know if that's the case, true or not, but I do have family members that have been incarcerated. This is why I'm paying attention to this, and they kind of speak like that, and I'm like, well, where are the resources? Like, what's the And they said, I don't know if it dropped off or they stopped it or what have you. So along with this program, would you also consider or look into or collaborate with those who would want to bring those back? So those who want to be an entrepreneur and those who just wants to be work with their hands.
So they're not necessarily mutually exclusive. They're not separate and apart. The skill sets complement each other. So you can build what you'd consider a hard skill, right? The ability to sheetrock or carpentry or whatever. And the skills that I'm teaching, which are basically three: how to systematically construct a project and get it finished. Right? That's one of the skills. The other one is how to look at your job like a business. So if you're a carpenter, an electrician, you're still running a business. So the skills transfer. And entrepreneurship is external ventures. So like a contractor would be an entrepreneur, whereas someone who worked for a contractor would be an intrapreneur if they were innovative and they took ownership of their role. So that's the second one. The other one is getting behind the thinking, attitudes, and behaviors that get in the way of people's success. So, whether it's a substance use disorder, whether it's untreated mental illness, whether it's, a sense of entitlement and arrogance, all of those sorts of things that are not safe to talk about in the light of day, this is a space to deconstruct that and make sure that when you are successful at whatever you're doing, those behaviors and attitudes don't get in your way. So I'm all for skilled trades. I love skilled trades. I mean, I can't do any of that stuff, so it's particularly useful for me that I can hire someone. I have to mount some TVs soon. I'm not doing that. I don't know how to find a stud, but there's someone who does know how to do that, and I'm happy to pay them for it. So beautiful plumbers, electricians, all of that, all stuff that's highly valuable. This is an additional set of skills, not an either or.
Hi. Thank you for such an innovative program. My question is about the fellowship itself. I don't know what year you are, maybe your second year?
I'm in my third.
Oh, third. So what are some of the resources that you have used to help you with your project, specifically at Columbia? Let's get into it.
Yeah, all right. No.
He's very entrepreneurial.
So that's a great question. Well, just as an example, I took a class. I've taken 6 classes since I've been here. I'm in my 6th class now, and we audit, so we don't get credit for it, but we get to sit in classes with some of the brightest minds in the world, right, who are actually out in the field doing things. So one of the resources is just access to amazing professors who you would think in an Ivy League college, they'd kind of, I should say what I assumed, that they'd be talking over my head, and I'd have to break out the dictionary and the thesaurus to figure everything out. No, very relatable, very down to earth, especially in the School of Professional Studies. Just communicating complicated concepts in a way that are easy to grasp, right? Which I actually think is a huge sign of intelligence, when people can take the complex and make it accessible. So there's that. I just this last week, I was in touch with most of those same professors, asking them, talking to them about my project and getting coaching and advice and, guidance and direction and all of those things. So,
What are some of the classes?
Some of the classes? So I took project management. One of the professor I took, it was project leadership, and I took it with Greg Robinson, who is, if you Google his name, he worked for, he helped launch a major telescope project after it was stalled for a long time. It was costing a lot of money. So he's probably one of the most notable folks in terms of if you look them up, right? But some of the classes I took, project management, I'm taking a human capital class now, I've taken marketing, risk management, basically things I was interested in that came up on the audit list. So those are some of the classes. I've had access to library resources. I'm a nerd, in case y'all couldn't guess. I'm just going to put it out there now. And so I love being able to access books and materials that I wouldn't normally have. You get a Columbia University email, which is great for additional learning resources that you may be able to get for free. Yeah, and the network. I mean, I get to be in rooms with people who are really focused and serious about what they want to learn and are willing to share.
As George stated earlier, I am also went through the Aaliyah Bundles Community Scholar Program. My topic was healthy living for people of color. I took classes at investing in social ventures. I took nutrition education classes at Teachers College. I also took a food writing class at the School of Journalism. I too am a library person as well too. The thing you have to realize is you audit the classes. So you can do the homework. Teacher's not going to grade it because he's not getting paid to look at your work. Okay, but at the same time, there were some instructors, like in nutrition education, they asked me to speak to their students because I'm a type 2 diabetic. And so they wanted me to share with them the type of people who have issues who aren't going to follow their instructions, and why I chose not to. And so that was beneficial to them as they're going through the program. So every class is different, and then some of the classes you actually got to talk yourself into, because even though this is a big university, some of these instructors have no idea of the purpose of the bundles program. So I'd send them an email to let them know, here's what I'm trying to do and how I want to use your class to help me further my project. So in some ways, you got to sell yourself to the instructors. But you're there to soak up knowledge from them, but you're not there to be a student like the rest of them. And so you have to walk that fine line as you're going through the program. But isn't enrollment into the program applications open through April?
Yep, April 27th.
27th, I thought it was the 17th. Okay, well, if you're interested, if you've got a project, like you said about teaching people trades and things like that, maybe that's something you may want to put forth, because it's only a 3-page, correct, summary. You don't have to write a thesis to get in, but you may have to by the time you finish.
Also, to clarify, it's been noted that these scholars are largely auditing classes, but there is, in addition to the Bundles Community Scholars Program, there is the Manhattanville auditing program. There's the auditing program, but if you live in this community, you're eligible to audit classes free of charge through the Manhattanville auditing program, and that application is open now. It goes until July 20th, so you don't necessarily have to be a Bundle scholar to take advantage of university resources, and I'm happy to talk to you about this or later. We have another Bundle scholars, one of our newest Bundle scholars. Do you want to talk a little bit about your very active curriculum that you were telling me?
Sure.
This is Miles.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. Yes, I am a year 1 Bundle scholar, and my project has changed form about 30 times in the past 2 semesters. But yeah, it's cool. I'm self-employed and run a small accounting practice of 3 people, and so it's been nice to just come onto campus and run around and take classes and just relive my student life again. Yeah, very interesting folks, but like you mentioned, it is quite self-directed, and I've found that sometimes, I didn't get to raise my hand before when you were going around asking people what they would, share with folks who are system impacted. But I think just showing up is a big thing. Sometimes there's not a whole lot that you can bring to the table, but just being there. And I found that that's incredibly helpful as I think about projects and just think about things, just being here, being on campus and absorbing things and brushing shoulders with people, attending events has been marvelous. And then I also joined the club tennis team, so I get to play tennis over at Columbia all the time, which is fun.
And thank you for that, Miles. That's a really good point. Showing up, that's one of the things that actually comes along with this skill set, is just being able to be present, because sometimes your presence is what's needed. I've been at board meetings where I was thanked for showing up, and I'm like, why? Because we needed a quorum, and we couldn't have made the decision one person shy. So, and one time in particular, I felt terrible. This was pure duty and obligation. There was nothing, I wanted to do nothing else but go to sleep, and I still showed up. And it was the thing that allowed us to make a critical decision. So thank you for sharing that. I'm actually going to incorporate that in the curriculum. Thank you.
We have a question from one of the creators of the Bundles Community Scholars
Can
Program.
we give him a round, please?
Flores Forbes.
Thanks, Ray. It was a fabulous project, man.
Thank you.
You said that you want to scale this because you created a social enterprise. So have you been in touch with the Tamer Center for Social Enterprise at the business school?
I was early on in the project, and then life started happening, so I will follow up on
Okay,
that.
because they have funding,
I do now.
and they can also help you, train you so that you can cut down your hour presentation for 90 seconds, that sort of thing.
Okay.
But I think that's something you need to really look into, because, you're talking about a social enterprise that would impact, there's probably 500,000 formerly incarcerated people living in New York City.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, so it's probably more than that. But, and I think it would be very impactful. And maybe this is a way if you can get them to help you scale it up so that you can get to the, some of the new programming that they're reorganizing at the mayor's office, around the mayor's office of criminal justice, because they're focusing on the crisis management system and the credible messengers and that sort of thing. So this will probably be something really helpful that can connect.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
We have some repeat questioners. Okay.
So because you brought up the Tamer Fund, I'll introduce myself formally. My name's Karen Hash, and I actually manage the Tamer Fund. So should you choose to reach out, I would be that person to speak to. My suggestion is our emails are on the website of the Tamer Institute, so you'll find me there.
I will find
And then
you
we
there.
can talk a bit more about the program and all of that.
Thank you so
Okay.
much. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Karen. It's becoming match game. Okay. Flo, do you have another question?
It was sort of a statement, but because I'm sitting behind, program royalty, I might as well turn it into a question. This is completely random, but I actually have had the privilege of working with the Lelia Bundles. I'm a photographer from Harlem, and there was for those not familiar, she's the great-great-granddaughter of Madam C.J. Walker, who was the first African-American millionaire. Someone can correct me. Okay, nods. Yeah, and I remember the job was essentially just capturing the woman behind this series that Netflix did about Madam C.J. Walker's life. I think unfortunately it only lasted for one season, but I had to do a lot of research, and so I got to learn a lot of stuff. All that to say, when you were talking about strategic alignment with systems, I was thinking of, I think because of what you said, I was thinking of, well, both of you guys, of how Madam C.J. Walker's whole well, not her whole mission, but the primary mission was understanding like, okay, Black women at this time, you know, we're not having the same opportunities because of the things, you know, the history of America, and her allowing the technology of hair care and I guess her philosophy around like presenting yourself, so to speak, to kind of impact women. It essentially like gave Black women the opportunity to be in certain rooms in certain positions. So all that to say, I wanted to just know like why was this program named after her, if anyone could speak to that, and I think maybe he could do it or you could do it.
Oh, okay. I'll take a stab at it, but Alelia was a longtime trustee of the university, and she was a very passionate advocate of this program. And so when she retired from the Board of Trustees, at 2012 maybe, the President Lee Bollinger named the program in honor of her. And she's still very much involved. In fact, she was the last Alelia Bundles speaker in this room for her new book, Joy Goddess, about her great-granddaughter, Alelia Walker, who was a major figure in the Harlem Renaissance. Anything to add, since you were there at the creation, Flores?
No, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's, you know, the scholarship program was created out of the, because of this campus here, because of the Manhattanville expansion program. And it was the Columbia Community Scholars Program. It was created back then, I guess it was 2009. And it was part of a basket of resources that the university was offering to the community. And this is the main one, was to give community members access to the intellectual capital of the university. You know, and so you're right. And Alelia's, has been heavily involved in it. And obviously, it looks like stuff is coming together. It definitely is.
Any other questions before we return to the reception? Yes, sir.
Thank you. My name is Fadl. The reason I was attracted to this session was the vision to value, because I had a vision in my mind, something that I'm working on, and why I wanted to make it, convert it into a value, and that is basically I'm working on a software or an application which may be used by the general public. Basically, it's an artificial intelligence doctor which can talk to everybody who has the application installed in the real time. But now, in order to convert into like a real value, which will be usable, of course, other than development, it requires a lot of more things, and it has some challenges. So I don't know how it fits in this program, if this program can benefit me in developing this, or if I have to do like some sort of other thesis or something like that. It's been quite some time that I have been studying. I did my master back in 2006, so since then I have been working in organizations, but now due to these new technologies, it is coming to the surface. So basically these ideas come. So just my question is like, how does it fit in this program, or if you want to suggest anything else? Thank you.
Probably something I could speak to you about offline. I'd need to think about it, is the short answer, and I need to talk to you more about it.
Yes.
Full disclosure, Ray's my mentor. But I do, Ray, you've helped me a lot in the last 5 years, and I'd love for you to share with this room, since there's so many of us that have either been system impacted or just in this community. You've had lived experience and professional experience where there are so many programs in the prison system and outside of the prison system. And can you share a little bit of the gap this is filling? because there's the Barred Prison Initiative, there's so many trade programs. Why this niche? Why this gap? Why now?
Excellent question. And I just need to correct one thing. This is like the mutual reciprocal mentoring society here. We are each other's advisors. So, and thank you for your support over the years. So what I've seen, I've worked across these different programs. I've worked across workforce development, general reentry, in-prison education, post-release education, and I've worked in partnership with a whole bunch of other reentry-oriented programs, and they're all doing amazing work. The thing I haven't seen anyone do as of yet is tie all of that together in what do you do next? So you get the education, what do you do with the education next? You get the workforce skill, what do you do with that? You get the job, how do you navigate the job? This is really intended to elevate leadership in this space in a very intentional way, starting at any point throughout the carceral timeline. Either early in incarceration, it could scale all the way back to pre-incarceration, all the way through post-incarceration and beyond. So I think a lot of it is really more around the flexibility of it and the applicability across different platforms. But I don't know if that answered your question.
This is great. I'm a proud Bundles grandson watching my forefather. No, this is really remarkable. As somebody who does also hire people, and I guess is an entrepreneur, and that I have a small business, how would I go about getting training in hiring somebody as just a system impacted person? I was thinking about, I was really buying into everything you were saying, and I was like, oh yeah, I hire people, I train people, but I deal with people's money, deal with taxes, there's all of this stuff. And I think that the thing that would be missing for me or somebody like me would be, I also would need a full program of, this is how you can work with these people. This is how you can communicate that to the other, clients or other folks that are in the orbit of the business. And have you given any consideration to that, like how you would, work with the other people?
That's a great question, and the answer to that is yes, I have actually, because I realize that in addition to I'm presenting it here as I'm offering a talented workforce that's an asset, but I also recognize that there's an increased level of risk that can come along with that, particularly in the profession that you're in, accounting. Yeah, you're dealing with people's money, the confidential, sensitive information, et cetera. So thank you for bringing that up. That's a great question. So the buy-in I'm looking for not just buy-in in the sense of people who are willing to hire these folks, because those exist. I think that, to your point, there needs to be an element of professional development for the employer. I'm not there today. I'm just going to be fully transparent, but I recognize that that's a legitimate need and something that I have competence and experience in, but I have not thought about how to do that for this particular program.
Okay, well, I think that will be the last question. Please help me thank Ray Tebout.